Hey everybody, this is Jared Marlowe with the Blue and Gray Education Society, and we have a very special guest here, somebody who I've been wanting to get on for a while now, and we finally were able to coordinate our schedules to make it happen. This is Chris Brown. He is the executive director, new executive director of the Civil War Trails program. No doubt you all have heard of Civil War Trails program. You've seen their signs all across the eastern part of the country. I mean, they're all over any Civil War site. They're there informing people. And I was really glad to get Chris on. Chris started his new role here soon, and we'll definitely talk more about that. But Chris, how are things going, man?
Things are great. Civil War Trails is in high demand. Don't let anybody tell you the Civil War is not popular. We cannot keep brochures on racks. We cannot keep requests for new sites in check. We've got almost 300 new sites, or 300 sites generally on our docket right now to work with. So if you reach out to us and you don't hear back quickly, please know we're working hard in the background. But we've got a lot of demand, which is a great problem to have.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that I've talked with people about too. People think with recent culture shifts and stuff that the Civil War isn't in high demand. I mean, there are people out there who genuinely want to know this stuff. And I think the kind of pushback against it has led to kind of like a counter movement. Like, okay, now that people are or this history is threatened, people want to know it more,
Well,
in
and
a sense.
in times of national conversation around the Civil War, people want one thing. They want the facts of where the history happened, and that's what we offer every day. We offer site-based interpretation of what happened exactly in any of the towns and sites we operate in, and our partners who fund us see the tourism dollar value in that, and the folks who are looking for us, they absolutely see the history value in that, and that's a good position to be in.
Oh, absolutely. But to start this off, let's talk more about you. Let's find out more about who Chris Brown is.
Absolutely. So I grew up in the historic triangle of Virginia around Williamsburg, Yorktown, and Jamestown. It's where I grew up. So I was surrounded by history from the jump. Definitely came to the Civil War via the Revolutionary period. Started my studies in the 18th century, but getting a history degree towards the middle years of the sesquicentennial, you're going to get some Civil War history, and it got into me there. So my early life and my professional world was living history, public history. I worked at Colonial Williamsburg for a number of years. And working in public history gave me a great idea of what people want to hear, what they want to learn, what they want to know. I work with audiences from kindergartners to retirees and everything in between, folks from all walks of life. And it taught me very much what folks are looking for in a history program. And that's really what I've brought to Civil War Trails. And while I am new to the executive director role, I have been with Civil War Trails for the last 8 years. So Drew, who many of your audience will likely know, he and I figure we did about a 250,000 miles together in our time together before he departed away. So I've been on the road learning about our partners, learning about our sites for almost the last decade, but been in history my entire working career.
That's awesome, man. We're getting Drew on here soon. I'm coordinating with him and the state for that in his new role. But 250,000 miles, that is no small feat.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride the last 8 years, but it's been a lot of fun.
So, what are some experiences that you had both, prior to Civil War Trails and with Civil War Trails that, kind of led to you becoming the director and like made you equipped to step into this role and take it full on?
No, absolutely. So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that early public history career really armed me to speak to wide audiences with more or less the same content. So, I mean, as many local historians will frustratedly admit, we only allow them 275 words on a sign.
Yeah.
And you've got to hook people with 275 words, hopefully in the first sentence. The 7 or 8 years I did in public history allows me to help steer that voice. You need to give them something to look at. You need to give them something to hook with in that first, and you can get more people than you would think with a story with that right initial hook. And doing that on my feet in public for 7 years before I started with Civil War Trails gave me a lot of that kind of perspective on how you do that. And with Civil War Trails, the last 8 years, we are a small enough team that everyone does everything. So I do have the benefit of knowing how all of our program works from literal nuts and bolts of how the signs go together all the way up to how to work with our more than 500 municipal partners that sustain this program, as well as local historians across 6 states, across all different backgrounds and histories, all different experiences in life. And it's been one of the delights of this job has been the wide variety of not only audiences, but people we get to work with. I've met some truly amazing people who are so passionate about their story and their town, and helping them tell that story has been just a delight, and it's why I'm so excited to be in the role I'm in now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And going back to what you said about trying to hook people, um, I'm a former school teacher, and I've also been on the board of the local um, museum here in Martinsville. And I found that no matter what age people are, they love a story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I got into teaching history, was because history had become just a series of names, dates, places that the people didn't really put together. But if you told them a story, that got them interested. And not only did it help with the memory part, but it made them want to know more. And even though your sides are 275 words and a few pictures, it's just enough to spark that. Like if you want to know more, like here's your launching point. Now go find it on your own.
And we are at our best when we can get folks interested and get them back to other organizations, your local museums, your local historical societies. If I can get someone excited and wanting to know more and they're already standing there, they'll find the resources nearby that they can find. And that is
Oh,
just delightful.
oh, absolutely. So, now taking over this role as the executive director, what excites you most about the future of Civil War Trails? Like, you've been in with the team now for 8 years. So what excites you now that you're, finally totally in charge of this thing?
I will say I am excited to take over this program in the best health it's ever been in. We are both fiscal and partnering and everything else. We are in such good shape to do so many cool things. The benefit of Civil War Trails over some other initiatives that are out there, everything we do is meant to be updated, meant to be changed, meant to be changed when new research comes out, when new approaches happen. And the the partners we have now are so excited to try new things. And that's what excites me the most. We're trying new approaches. We're trying, more personal stories. Because just as you and I were talking about a minute ago, if you can give a person story of a battle, not only is the history buff, who I can't teach anything new in 275 words, they've come there because they know the battle happened. But everyone who's trapped in the car with them, they can learn
Right.
something from a personal story. So we are doing a lot more personal stories. We're doing a lot more stories that maybe your traditional Civil War historians haven't looked at yet. We've got communities who are unearthing new records, unearthing new stories and perspectives, and are trusting us to help them tell those stories in ways we haven't had before. And that's been amazing to see the community engagement, to see the excitement of our stakeholders. We're doing neat stuff. I mean, and it's all over the gamut. We're telling more stories of USCT troops than we've ever told before. Those communities are very excited to tell those stories, proud of their predecessors, as they absolutely should be. And we're telling more stories of the home front. We're telling a lot more stories of folks who had a very quiet 19th century life, and then one day there was an army or two on their front doorstep, and what was that like? So folks react so much better. Our audience that we're finding reacts so much better to those personal stories, and our partners are starting to see the benefit in it, and it's been fascinating to see how that's turned out.
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to Civil War, you know, it kind of feels like at times the main leaders, the main battles have kind of been beat to death,
Yeah.
but the Civil War impacted every single person, across the entire footprint of it. I mean, it didn't matter if you were a mother at home with, kids just trying to make ends meet, or an old man who was in the home guard that got called up to defend, a bridge near your house. It impacted you in some kind of way, and I'm glad that y'all are telling these stories because they do, it, I think people kind of, when they think about the Civil War, it's kind of again, from a leadership perspective, like, Lee, Jackson, Grant, but they don't bring it down to the level of this was my third or fourth great grandfather. Like, what were my grandparents doing in this area? What could they have been doing? What could they have seen? And I think your signs and now your mission is, or your new mission is really tying into that. And I'm really glad to hear that you are going in that direction.
Well, I think the common perception is very much there are 4 years of white guys with beards shooting at each other off of horses.
Yep.
And sure, But that's not the whole story. I guarantee anybody can find themselves in Civil War history. We've got units who didn't speak English. I mean, you've got the
Yep.
Union Army service manuals are printed in multiple languages because there were so many people of foreign extraction fighting in this conflict that they had to print them their own manuals because they couldn't read English.
Right.
You've got folks who run the spectrum. You've got people from all over the world fighting this conflict. You get people from all different backgrounds who choose to fight in this conflict for their own reason, and you can find yourself there. I know that you can.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in appealing to a more or a wider audience now, what are some things that you are doing to appeal to newer generations, younger people, more diverse audiences, people who are, um, again, who are learning history from TikTok, things like that. So, what are some approaches that you all are taking to reach those people?
I think one of the biggest strengths we have is, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, we're an analog product. We are an acrylic panel and a metal base, but people want to stand where things happen because you can't get that on TikTok. You can't get that on a YouTube short. You're going to travel to see where these events happened and unplug and be there in that moment. And the more personal stories, kind of getting back to earlier, the more personal stories we can tell of someone who was there that day. I'm getting ready in a week or two to go up to Wrightsville, Pennsylvania to talk about kind of a side campaign as part of the Gettysburg campaign. And it's college boys who saved the town because they burn a bridge down because the Confederates show up one day. And you can talk to younger people who maybe don't see themselves in this. And you're, no, these were kids. And they were doing what they could to defend their town. And that's how their town got saved from being destroyed. Those personal stories that happened where they happened, you can't get that anywhere else. And the traveler we're seeing is starting to see that. So all the travel profiles we're getting from research, our audience is getting younger and more diverse because as you write these new stories, they're not just the mainline battle stories where a third corps left flank marched by here one day in June of
Mhm.
1863. Throw that on a map. The folks who want it will get it on the map. You can save a lot of text that way. Tell a personal story of a soldier who was there. One of our most popular signs, kind of in the right pre-COVID era, was about a Union unit who chases a Confederate unit because the Confederates got into some green corn and it wrecked their stomachs. And that's how they track the unit. And we talk about that on the sign. People engage with it. That's human. That's a human story.
Right.
And it was popular with homeschoolers. We got all kinds of letters about that sign. But it was, these folks had a bad digestional day, and it militarily mattered, as it turns out.
Right.
But you do those kind of stories, and people love them, and they engage with them. And the more folks can see themselves in the stories, the more they'll stop at that next site.
Right. And if anything, limiting that story to 275 words captures the attention of somebody who doesn't have a very long, span of, or, attention span, somebody who's not reading Shelby Foote or Bruce Catton.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. It's here's a snapshot, here are the pictures. If you're reading about this person, oh, there they are. They did this thing. Boom, that's it.
Yeah.
And I've said it on this channel dozens of times. You can read all you want to about a battle or like, for example, Antietam, Bloody Lane. You can read all about it that you want to. You can study and see it on the maps, but until you actually stand there in it,
Yeah.
it's different. Until you actually can stand there and say, okay, this is where this person died. This was this person's house. Like this is where this event took place. It adds totally brand new meanings to it.
No, it absolutely matters. And that is one of the strengths of our program. And unfortunately, there are times where we don't get to tell the stories we want because we can't find the exact site to tell it where it happened. That's one of the core requirements of Civil War Trails is you're standing in that event. And, that limits us slightly, but what we do have is so much more powerful because of it.
Right.
And that's a strength at the end of the day.
Right. And you mentioned having, close to 300, possible, sites, coming up. How do you decide which news stories and locations to highlight? Or is there like a ranking system of importance, or how do you all decide that?
So I will say the 300 sites in the backlog are often things like, oh, this could just be turned 90 degrees. So they're not all like brand new content. It's just minor tweaks here and there. But we do have a record number of new projects coming on board. So let's get into those. Each Civil War trail site is a grassroots grown effort by local history stakeholders. So very occasionally we'll go out if we find a really cool story we really want to tell, but more often than not, stories come to us. A local history group, a local historian will reach out to us and get us started on a story. With their help and their start, what we then do is go out to their local tourism organization, and that's who we work with fiscally to support that story. But the story itself comes from community stakeholders, local historians, and occasionally us, but more often than not, that is a grassroots, homegrown story, which is why they're all unique. They all have their own flavor a little bit here and there. We take those stories, we put them into our own style guides so that when travelers show up, the signs read as a Civil War Trails product. But that text starts out at a grassroots level.
And is it kind of a first come, first serve basis, or you do them as you get to them, or um,
More or less first come, first serve. There are stories we definitely get more excited about. I can't have favorite children, but there are stories we get more excited
right?
But by and large, it we kind of combine it with the maintenance that we know we need to do to our existing product, and that's how we prioritize throughout the year. Of okay, I know I'm going to West Virginia, let's say in August, so by May or June, I need to be working on whatever new stories are there and that kind of thing. Uh,
Mhm.
so a little behind the scenes peek for the entire six-state network, there are only three full-time employees. So we do a lot of long-term planning to make sure we get to where we need to get. It's we're a lean team that gets a lot done for our size.
Right. And kind of going along with that, if somebody is interested in getting a Civil War trail sign, you mentioned it starts very much with a local historian or a group that has an interest. Like what do they need to do in order to get kind of a package together in order to send to you all?
Absolutely. And this goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. Step number one is make sure that a property owner where your story happened is willing to host that sign. That's the biggest thing that trips up new applications is folks get really excited about this story and it happened at a corporate location today and the corporate landowner is not interested. That can slow an application down. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen occasionally.
Mhm.
So step number one, have your story, have your research, have it cited, and make sure you have a location for that sign to actually go. We've seen a lot of very eager local historians decide that they're going to put one in a local park, and that can go well, doesn't always go super great. So have a location, have a story, and then reach out to us once you have that all together. So civilwartrails.org is how kind of to go about that. There's some information there on how that process works. But I will say the applications that get done the quickest are the most complete when they're submitted the first time. The more we have to go back and forth, the longer that sign tends to take to happen. But it's a relatively straightforward process. You need to identify who's paying the initial fee. That usually is that history community group, and who's going to sustain that sign going forward. And that's usually your local tourism entity. But that is really all the bureaucracy there is in getting a Civil War Trail sign on board. We have review process internally that will take that information, verify its historical accuracy, get it into the right tone that we use in our style guide. But it's a relatively straightforward process.
That's awesome. And again, they are actively taking applications. If you could put this together and send it to them, Chris and his team will definitely look at it and they will get back to you because they're out there. This is their job to educate and put signs out there for folks. So,
Absolutely.
now you said you didn't have any favorite, or you can't play favorites, or didn't have any favorite children. But is there a favorite trail site of yours, or a lesser known story that's out there that people should know more about, or a sign that doesn't get visited enough that you think should? Just kind of throwing it out there. I know you say you can't play favorites, but
No, I think, you know, a lot of our product, we've got a lot of battles because that's largely what the war's comprised of, but there's some really, really neat kind of day-to-day reality sorts of things. We've got a sign out in Asheville, North Carolina, that's about a young man signs up early in the war for a North Carolina unit. And this young man from the mountains of North Carolina who signed up to be in the infantry suddenly finds himself on the CSS Virginia, the most advanced warship of its day, until about 2 weeks from now when it's going to get in a fight with a more advanced ironclad warship. But it's those kind of stories. That's one of my favorites because it's an unassuming sign, kind of up in the hills, North Carolina, but it tells that very human story of a young man signs up for the army, finds himself suddenly in the Navy for reasons he's not really certain of, fighting on, the first ironclad warship that's ever seen the surface of the water. That guy had probably never been on a boat before. And all of a sudden he's doing this. So those kind of advances in technology signs. We've got a lot of signs that are incredibly bold, if not very foolish actions that individuals take during the war. We've got a sign in coastal North Carolina. There's a Union unit burning a turpentine factory on their way through North Carolina. And in the flames of the factory behind them, they see an ironclad sitting in the marsh across from them. And a young man takes a barrel stave and tries to swim over the ironclad and burn it to the ground or to the waterline, I suppose. Doesn't work out super well for him. But he gets back to, back to his bank. But there's all these stories of just young men away from home, some of these folks for the first time in their lives, having these experiences. I think they're just fascinating. So no particular favorites. I will say the more rural stories tend to be the more fascinating stories to me because there's a reason they're there and they are truly fascinating. I mean, a lot of our West Virginia footprint I can't recommend enough because the wild railroad raids and all the things that get up to in West Virginia. I mean, every one of our states has something unique to it because the war is different everywhere. And it's just, yeah, can't pick favorites. There's a lot of really wild stories out there. And the benefit of following us is you're going to get slice of life of somebody who was there that day. And that's just, it's hard to pick a favorite of that.
Right. And, your signs are literally everywhere from the mountains of Carolina all the way to the remote beaches of Carolina. I think Drew sent me a video one time of, he said there was one that you had to hike like 8 or 10 miles to get to or something like that on the beach or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
that's a fairly recent project we did with Virginia State Parks. It's on in Falls Cape State Park, Virginia. It's this far from the North Carolina border in Virginia, and you can walk to North Carolina from that park on the sand. There's a POW escape off of a Union ship where these Confederate officers immediately after parole breaks down realize that there's no other option. They steal their own POW ship, take it there, get off, and run through the Outer Banks, through the Dismal Swamp, escape to the Weldon Railroad, and get back to Richmond. And that sign is 6 miles from the nearest parking lot. You have to mean to get there. We've got a sign on an island in the middle of the Potomac for a maritime disaster that happens right at the end of the war in the Potomac. Most of our signs are ADA accessible. You can drive right up to them, park, get out, and go see the sign. But there are some adventures as well. We've got signs on tops of mountains. We've got signs kind of all over the place. And I find the more remote they are, the wilder the story they tell is.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I I think that is a absolutely fascinating story. And again, one of those stories that you won't get by reading your typical Civil War book, but it's one of those stories that will fascinate people. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a left flank maneuver at Gettysburg, but that's an awesome story.
Yeah.
So,
And a lot of those stories are very much, I mean, even in your big, volume of foot, they're footnotes at best,
right.
but they're very real stories and they impacted people's lives forever. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and some of those, great stories, like you said, they're footnotes, or, I found that some generals didn't write as much about them in the record because of how it made them look. I know Drew and I were talking about us trying to get a sign up in Charlottesville uh, for a rather embarrassing episode for George Custer that he mentioned like one sentence briefly, and he didn't even characterize the how things went. He painted it to make himself look okay, but then he moved on. But it was a rather embarrassing situation for him. But it's those stories that are just absolutely incredible, and people will miss if they don't stop to read those signs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thinking bigger picture here, how do you think the Civil War Trails program contributes to the national conversation about memory, preservation, and our shared history?
No, I think, it's one of those things that organizations who work in the Civil War definitely have to be aware of. I mean, we're working on memory of a traumatic event that happened in our nation's history, and how do you address that respectfully? How do you do it the right way? And how do
Mhm.
you interpret that to the biggest audience you can. You can have the greatest product in the world, but if you put somebody off, that's the last time they're going to stop and read a Civil War trail sign. So for us, one of the biggest ways we really try and think about as we go about our business is making sure the product we put out is the best product we can, that talks to the biggest audience it can, and tells the very real story of what happened there. It's not all pretty. There are things that happened during the period leading up to and during the Civil War that are incredibly ugly, but you have to tell them because that's the reality of what happened and what happened around the conflict we talk about. So I think the biggest thing we as an organization can do, and organizations like us, is tell that whole story. Because if you don't, why would someone stop the next time they see one of your signs or the next time they think about a different organization who's associated with the Civil War? I think Civil War organizations, the best thing we can do is tell the whole story of the Civil War, tell it warts and all, and make sure we tell it at a level people can understand. If I read bivouac one more time on a sign, I know historians know what that word is, but your average person
Right.
stopping by, what is bivouac? What are we doing here? Make it approachable. We, as people involved in history, oftentimes I think forget ourselves and forget that not everyone knows what we know. Make it approachable, make it clear. We write typically for about a fifth to sixth grade reading level because A, in 275 words, I can't get but so much in depth. And B, folks who don't have the background in the Civil War might well be interested if you invite them in.
Right.
If you don't invite them in, they're certainly not going to be interested. So I think the biggest thing we can do is reach out to the most people we can reach out to, interpret the history factually, accurately, and completely. I think at the end of the day, all you can do. And
Right.
it certainly seems to be working.
Right. And what do you hope that visitors will take away after following, some of these trails or reading the signs? Not just about the Civil War itself, but about the places and people that were mentioned in these signs.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway for, readers and visitors to our sites is the humanity of the conflict. It's not all sepia toned pictures. It's young people involved in one of the bigger things in their lives. And it's the story of a national crisis. It's a story of change in our country that was a long time coming from its start. And it's a story of people. At the end of the day, the Civil War is a story about people. And I think it's the biggest takeaway that we try and get across in our sites is it can feel big, it can feel unapproachable, but at the end of the day, every action you read about in the Civil War, every minute you read about in the Civil War is somebody's story. And that is something people can identify with.
Absolutely. So last question here, we've talked about y'all's great mission and how y'all are accomplishing it, and no one does it quite like you all do it. What are some ways that people can support you all and support that mission of getting out there and help sharing these stories with people?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, one of the biggest things that we often find we can kind of democratize out as help is, as I mentioned a bit ago, there's not a huge staff that runs this very big program geographically. We cover 200,000 square miles with 3 employees. So, one of the biggest helps folks can do is as you travel around, as you're on your vacations, wherever it is you're heading, and you see a Civil War trail sign, stop, take a look, read it. Let us know if the sign looks bad. Let us know if the sign's boring. Let us know if you think there's something else about it we can improve. The biggest help we can get is having more eyes on the Civil War Trails program out in the field. There is always the lovely option if you could absolutely donate. The fiscal support is always lovely and welcomed, and we have a lot of very generous donors who help us out. But the biggest thing for us is if you're living somewhere in the mid-Atlantic where Civil War Trails exists, just keep an eye on the program. Let us know how it's looking.
Awesome. And when you're going out and visiting these sites, on vacation or just leisurely, if you have social media, take pictures of yourself with the sign, take pictures of the sign, tag Civil War Trails, let them know where you are.
Absolutely.
That's because I know it's a three-person operation, but I guarantee somebody's going to see it there, and you can let people know, hey, this may be a random sign out in, Maryland, but hey, people here are here seeing it.
And I will say that thank you for that. That's something I definitely should have gotten to. But uh, our partners who sponsor those signs love seeing when people check in at those signs. I love seeing when people check in at those signs. So yeah, take a sign selfie, tag Civil War Trails in it. We'd love to see you guys out there in the field exploring what we've got to offer. And it is nice for our team to see folks actually out there reading and engaging with the signs because we see it from time to time, but it's really nice to see people excited and out traveling the trails.
Awesome. Well, Chris, is there anything left that we haven't asked you that you want to mention or let folks watching this know?
No, I really appreciate you taking the time. As folks travel Civil War trails, you can get a hold of us through civilwartrails.org. We are happy to send you out brochures that is free of charge. We are happy to send you out travel recommendations. One of the benefits of being set up the way we are, I've been in the field to a lot of these sites. Our team has been in the field to a lot of these sites. If you're looking for the best barbecue in town, some place to stay, all those kinds of things as you plan your trip, we're happy to hook you up with that. We're happy to make recommendations, tell you where to eat, where to stay, where you need to bring cash, which is everywhere. The best food along the trail is cash only smokers on the side of the road. They are delightful. But if you're looking to plan a trip, reach out, let us know. Our team is more than happy to give you recommendations, put you in touch with our partners who help plan itineraries and things like that, as well as ourselves. And yeah, we appreciate you taking the time to interview us. And for those of you traveling the trails, check in, take a sign selfie, let us know you were there. And anything we can do to support you on your travels, we're happy to do.
Yeah. And obviously my travel is going to be kind of limited this summer with adding a new one to the family. But one thing that I would love to do is actually go on or to follow a trail within Civil War trails, like the Lee's Retreat Trail or the Gettysburg Trail. So if you're wanting to spend a lot more time and not just visit random signs along the way. Civil War Trails has actual trails you can follow where you can go in the footsteps of these people and kind of see the events unfold. So that's something that I'm looking forward to doing. Maybe not this year, hopefully next year. But if you're looking to plan a trip around that event, they have that as well.
Absolutely. Not only do we have brochures that help you follow those thematic narrative routes, hopefully in the next month or two, finger crossed, our new website will be up, which will have an interactive map that will help you follow distinct trails along the route as well. So there's some opportunities to follow some really neat actions.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. Remember, if you're out there and you're traveling this summer or traveling at any point in time, and you see the little white sign with the blue bugle, or is it it's blue, correct?
Red.
Red,
Red.
right? Or red bugle, blue text. If you see those, just pull off the side of the road. Stop. Take 2 minutes to read this thing. Stand in the place where history stood. Chris and his team are doing great work. Chris, thank you so much for coming on, and we wish nothing but the best for you.
Thank you so much for having me.